I've been in a very sort of Superman-y mood the last couple of weeks. I'm preparing this video that I've already shot, and I'm just in the process of editing it now. It's like I call it an epic defense of the film Superman Returns, which is very, very maligned, especially on the internet. And I love the movie Superman Returns. And I'm editing this video that I'll probably post in 2 parts, maybe in the next week or so. That is my case in favor of Superman Returns. So I'm in a very Superman-y mood, and while I'm continuing to prepare that Superman Returns video, I wanted to share something else Superman related. It's one of my favorite Superman comics. It was originally printed in the September 1958 issue of Superman, which was Superman number 124. And it was written by Otto Binder and with art by Kurt Schaffenberger, and it's titled Mrs. Superman. This is a story that I love because it shows what a horrible person Superman was, and yet somehow how awful he was never really seemed to dawn on anybody. Like, I wonder if there were moments in the offices at DC Comics where the artists and the writers and the editors would get together when they were doing a story like this and just laugh at what a dick Superman was. Because in this story, he comes off as just a horrible person, just a total heel. What happens is this. Clark and Lois in the 50s is in like hardcore girl reporter mode, where like her mission in life is to A, prove that Clark Kent and Superman are the same person, and B, get Superman to marry her. That's like her mission in life. That's the reason she wakes up in the morning. So they're on their way back from an overseas mission, and they've apparently made most of the trip by boat, and now they're heading back to land in a helicopter. But, of course, the helicopter is forced to crash by a meteor that comes streaking through the sky. Luckily for Lois and for Clark, there's an island nearby. It's a volcanic island, and they parachute down to the island. And while Lois is taking off her parachute, Clark gets the bright idea to sort of run out of sight and change into Superman, fly back to the Navy ship and alert them that they're trapped on this island, and then come back and change back into Clark before Lois is any the wiser. But unfortunately for Clark's plans, he discovers when he changes into Superman that he can only fly so high because the meteor that crashed into the volcano, as it turns out, was made of kryptonite, and the kryptonite dust from this meteor has formed a thick cloud over the island, so Superman can only fly so high, and then he's assaulted by kryptonite clouds and he has to come back down. So he decides, well, if I can't fly straight up, if I'm trapped from above by the kryptonite cloud, then I will tunnel under the earth and I will get out that way. So he tunnels under the earth, and of course the kryptonite meteor has crashed directly into the volcano. It is melting into kryptonite lava, which is blocking his way from the bottom. So he is hemmed in from the top by the cloud of kryptonite and from the bottom by the underground river of molten kryptonite. So cut off from the world, at least temporarily, because if one imagines the kryptonite meteor will not last forever if it is burning and melting so quickly as to produce both a cloud and a river of molten kryptonite. But Superman seems to think that he is marooned on this island for life. He has also apparently forgotten that he could just fly horizontally below the cloud until he gets away from the kryptonite, or even swim for it. I'm sure Superman would be quite a fast swimmer. Anyway, he's too dumb to figure this out, so he figures he's marooned on the island for life. So he decides to do the only logical thing, and that is to reveal his secret identity to Lois and ask her to marry him. He performs some feats of strength. He does some shit with his X-ray vision. He flies around. He pulls open his shirt to show the Superman uniform beneath his clothes. He proves to Lois, after all these years, that Superman and Clark Kent are one and the same. And she accepts it, and she agrees to become Mrs. Superman. There are natives on the island, of course, and Superman, using his super brain, quickly learns their language and gets the chief to agree to marry he and Lois. And in the meantime, as they're preparing for the wedding, Superman builds a house for them in the trees of this tropical paradise. And just as he's about to burn his Clark Kent clothes, he just decides to X-ray the volcano. He hears some rumbling in the earth, and lo and behold, the Kryptonite meteor, which he had thought just a few days ago would trap him on this island for life, has now, in the space of just a few days, melted and fallen into a crevice in the earth, and the Kryptonite curtain above is gone, the Kryptonite river below is gone. Superman is free to fly as high as he likes and escape the island. And of course, the first thing that comes to his mind when he realizes that he is free is, how the hell do I get out of the wedding to Lois? I have an idea. What's Superman's idea, you may wonder? Is it to man up and marry Lois and be happy and just take the risk that maybe she'll be killed by Lex Luthor someday, or she might let slip his secret identity to one of the 3 or 4 people in the DC Comics universe in the 50s that didn't know? No, his solution is to engage in a very, very complicated and elaborate deception to make it look like he was Clark Kent, mild-mannered reporter all along, trying to trick Lois into thinking he was Superman. So here's what he does. He finds a sunken cargo ship and steals a bunch of machinery. He takes it back to a cave and constructs a bunch of devices. He finds Lois standing at the altar, ready to marry Superman, and he is once again wearing his Clark Kent clothes, which he luckily did not burn, and feigning a guilty conscience, which I don't think Superman is capable of feeling. Judging by this story, in all sincerity. He feigns a guilty conscience, and he says to Lois, hey, guess what? I'm not Superman. I'm Clark. I can only fly because I had a powerful magnet and a metal belt that was able to lift me up. I could only pick up that boulder because it was paper mache. I had a blowtorch on a timer, however that was supposed to work, that set the bush on fire. It wasn't my heat vision. It was all tricks just to make you think that I was really Superman so you would marry me. And Lois, because in this incredibly naive and sexist and misogynistic characterization, is dumb enough to fall for this, she accepts that this is what has happened, that Clark is just trying to trick her into thinking that he is Superman. And her interpretation is that Superman has arranged all of this, has put Clark up to tricking Lois into marrying her, because Superman doesn't want to marry Lois. He wants someone else to marry her so she'll leave him alone. So Clark puts a message in a bottle, and when Lois isn't looking, he super throws it out into the ocean, and pretty soon they're rescued by Captain Hitler. And after they get back to land, Lois has a few days to think about it, and she decides that Superman wasn't really being such a bad guy after all. He arranged apparently he arranged the helicopter crash, which presumably killed the pilot, who was never mentioned, and their sabbatical on the island in order to keep Lois safe from a dangerous criminal who was on trial, and to keep her out of the public eye until this criminal could be convicted and sent to prison. So she ends the story sitting at her desk at the Daily Planet, daydreaming about Superman and what a wonderful guy he is, because he was willing to go to such incredible lengths to lie to her and trap her on an island just so she would be safe from this dangerous criminal who was on trial. The depth of the emotional abuse that Superman knowingly, willfully puts Lois Lane through in the Superman comics of the 1950s and 60s. The insane, psychotic lengths he goes to preserve his secret identity at the cost of Lois's self-confidence and perhaps even sanity are mind-boggling, especially if you grow up with just sort of the Christopher Reeve Superman of the movies, or you have just a general impression of Superman of the comics, or you don't really look too far into it or read too much into it. Superman is really a horrible, horrible, horrible person, and a terribly abusive friend and potential lover to Lois. Luckily, the horrible emotional abuses that Superman inflicts on Lois are like all forms of abuse in real life, actually incredibly hilarious and entertaining when viewed from the outside.
Look, up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's Superman. Faster than a bullet, stronger than a diesel, leaps tall buildings in